Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Sportsman. I'm the founder and CEO of Praetorian, and today we're going to give you a full scope demonstration of our Praetorian Guard platform. This is what you're up against, and this is what we're going to demonstrate how real this is. So we're an offensive security company. We're known for kind of getting into things, hard targets, that sort of thing. We've built a platform and we've seen a migration to continuous. But this platform is way bigger than continuous penetration testing or continuous red teaming. Ultimately, we've also built in what they call threat exposure management. And as I walk you through this platform, you're going to see we have attack surface management, breach and attack, cyber threat intel, penetration testing, of course, and vulnerability management. But we meet the customer where they are. And so if they have Census or they have Qualys, that's totally fine. We'll just integrate it, but we have these own capabilities ourselves. We're going to start with AI because everyone is super jazzed about this sort of stuff right now, particularly as these models are getting better. And so let's just kind of start here and I'll kind of explain as we go. We're going to compromise with Marcus and his band of Mary Caesars. So Marcus is our orchestrator agent. He is your conduit into the platform. And so I just asked him a question, who are you? He kind of talks about his background and kind of the things that he can do. Now let's ask him, what is your mandate? We can ask him questions. We have about 15 years worth of data from being an offensive security company that we've fed Marcus and his band of merry men. But we can also query him on the enterprise relationships that he has for the particular tenant and the particular customer. And so I'm going to show you how that works in query mode, and then we're going to move on to agent mode. As you can see from the supported attack surfaces, a lot of these companies that are up and coming, they're just focusing on web apps or they're just focusing on internals. We focus on enterprise risk. We're focused at the CISO level, at the board of directors levels. And we need to look at all the attack surface to understand what the critical paths in are. But let's ask him another basic question. What login portals do I have that are internet exposed? So that's querying. That's a read operation. In query mode, you can talk to him, and he can do reads on the various databases we have. A graph database. We have a data lake, we have a, sort of a DynamoDB database, just a lot of different databases, and he has that full context. But Marcus can also be flipped into agent mode. And in agent mode, this is where you start to see the power of orchestration. So we're going to do something a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to talk to him this time because I don't want to type this much. Hey Marcus, compromise this environment. Leverage all the attack surfaces that you see, all the agents that we can use, make it super interesting. I want you to really mix it up. People are watching. We need to wow them and really show them the full scope of your capabilities. Just do not stop until the objective is reached. So we're going to go ahead and kick him off. And so Marcus talks to these sub-agents. These sub-agents are specialized. And so there's a lot of things you have to deal with when it comes to AI. One of them is you need to make sure that they're bounded, right? That they're not falling out of scope. There's controls that we have in place for that. But one of the ways to control how agents work is through the action space. And let's take a look at what he's picking. So he's going through his list of agents, capabilities, and skills. And you can kind of see the list of various agents that he's picked. So that's good. So you'll see him, the orchestration kind of launch. And so the way that this works is that these agents have specialized prompts, they have specialized skills, and they have specialized capabilities that is all they are allowed to call. So we control it literally through code, and we constrain it. For the capabilities, we're kind of open sourcing those, and so APIs, we open source Vespasian for cloud, we open source Aurelian recently. This one we're probably not going to open source, and I'll kind of explain why in a second, and I'll kind of give you a demonstration of it. But Constantine, and there's Mythos that's coming out. We're super excited about that. But it's more than just talking to an LLM and pointing it at a code base. With Constantine, it's an entire pipeline of running through a sequence of steps to actually make sure that we find 0 days, we write exploits that work, and then Constantine can actually even PR and patch the code base if we want it to. And so the way that each of these works, they're fairly sophisticated. And then Marcus, based on commander's intent, right, based on the goals that we provide, he chooses what agents to use. Marcus can talk to the agents can talk to Marcus, and then the agents can talk to each other. And so if you've ever messed around with something like Claude Teams, it's a very similar concept, but the idea is knowledge sharing on the context that they're finding through the environment. And I'll show you that context here in a second. We're going to let him kick off, and then I'm going to give you a full tour of the platform to understand how big of a scope the platform is. Again, this is more than just continuous penetration testing. This is more than just a wrapper around an LLM, but let's let him get his workflow going. Once that starts, we'll kind of move around. The last thing that I'll say before he kicks off is not only do we have, and I'll just pause here for a second, attack plan, 7 simultaneous fronts, credential assault, okay, LLM exploitation, a little bit of cloud, vulnerability researcher, a little crit finder, CI/CD pipeline attack, secret scanning, and findings valid. Yeah, I need to talk to you about passive agents versus active agents. That sounds good. Okay, so proceed. Human in the loop. He's asking me for confirmation, and so we're just going to give him the green light. So passive agents, then I'll come back to Coliseum. So we have passive agents and active agents. Passive agents are agents. They're kind of, it's more than reading the environment or querying the environment. They are doing things, but they're mostly benign. So triaging vulnerabilities that come in from Wiz or come in from Tenable, that's a passive agent. Verifying a domain, dangling DNS record or a domain's takeover attack, those are passive agents to kind of verify it. Active agents are full-on attack. They're there to compromise, and we're kicking off some active agents right now. So a couple that he's already kicked off. Brutus does credential attacks. He's also multimodal, so the capability is pretty cool. If it wants to take screenshots, it'll pass it to like a Kimi 2.5 if we want to point it to that model where it has very strong relationships between vision, sort of not just multi-model but multimodal, where it can understand the world around it, but then it can also understand code and kind of relate those things. Augustus is another capability that we open sourced. It's for jailbreaking LLMs. LLMs are going to be kind of a new attack surface. Trajan for CI/CD, Diana for web applications, Titus for secrets. So he's going. If we sit here and watch, he'll just kind of scroll as he does his thing. We've told him to compromise and to not stop until the objective is done. So I'm going to give you a walk around of the platform, and we'll periodically come back and look and see how he's doing. So step one, context. We need to map the terrain, both as attackers and as defenders, right? And so traditional attack surface management, we do that. We don't really see that as a product. It's a feature. It's a stepping stone. It's an input. It's not an output. It's not an outcome. What we're trying to get to is the outcome of what are the few things that you actually need to care about. The first step in that is understanding the assets. It's understanding the environment, both as attackers and defenders. There's two ways to do this. We can map the assets, and you get an asset list. So we have our own techniques for enumerating these things. We have a tool called Pius that we also open source. And so whether we're querying Edgar filings or certificate scraping or zone transfers, we can kind of find these things and figure out where they are in the environment. So that's what we call a zero knowledge or outside in. If you notice, you also see these little plus ones. So it's in Tenable, it's in GitHub. I'll show you a full scope of that in a second. But there's a number of things that we have integrated, and we can ask questions. We can ask, and pull the app inventory from Okta. We can look at Cloudflare and our DNS records. And what we can start to get an understanding of is like and like. And so things like this, it's in Cloudflare. We also found it independently, deduplication technology, that's good. But things like this as well, where we can start looking at what are the deltas between your systems of record, and why is it that Cloudflare and Praetorian are discovering this, and Tenable is, which is good, but why aren't these being scanned by Tenable? You have a vulnerability management solution, and that's what we kind of see with these maturity models and NIST CSF and ISO 27000. Yes, you have a vulnerability management solution, and yes, you have SLAs on patches. Here's the problem. You're actually not scanning your entire inventory. And so whether it's Okta and login portals or applications and WAF, we can kind of do that. The way that that works is through integrations, and I want to come back and I'll show you the full scope. But basically what we're looking at is the total enterprise risk of the organization. And so we think about it in terms of attack surfaces. A lot of these competitors, they're starting in things like applications, and they're doing autonomous web application hacking, or some of them focus on the perimeter, or some of them focus on the internal on-prem. We kind of do all of it. We do all of it. And so whether it's perimeter applications, including LLMs, I think he was going to jailbreak some LLMs, social engineering, code, cloud, internet, this is your attack surface. These are all the ways in which we as operators, doing this for 15 years, like to get into the environment. Code includes static analysis, but with sophisticated LLMs, but it's also things like supply chain attacks, it's CI/CD, like you saw how Triage just got hit, Axios, how they just got hit with supply chain, and then secrets, which some companies like Travelhog charge for. It's a feature. It's not a platform. But on the integration side, we have all those capabilities. We can do all these things ourselves, but meet the customer where they are, right? And so with these integrations, we have a lot of these are input sources. It could be input sources for assets. It could be input sources for vulnerabilities. Some of them are input sources for telemetry when it comes to detection response. I'll show that in a minute. And then output. So pull the information in and then rifle shot out the things that actually matter. So if we go to vulnerabilities, I'll come back here in a second. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. But if we take the origin of Wiz, Wiz is a great product, sold for $30 billion to Google. We love Wiz, but can be a little bit noisy. And so these things come into a detected state for us. If the customer lets us integrate into their cloud environment like we are, we can not only find our own things with Aurelian, and we focus not on best practice in theory, we focus on kill chains. That's all that matters. But we can also triage these things, either human-led or more efficiently with agents, and I'll show you that in a second. Speaking of agents, let's run back and take a look at how he is doing. Brutus, access, repos, extract secrets, cool. Unpinned actions in Coliseum. I think it was shaw pinning. At how Tree got hacked, I can't remember. Blah, blah, full pipeline compromise, that's good. What else has he done? Triage high, priority, Brutus, 2 valid credentials, paired discovered. Operational Coliseum, okay, so he's actually gone after, is he going after Coliseum or repo, or is he just calling it that? He might just be calling it that. He's getting into some stuff. So he has completed a couple. He's gotten blocked on one. He doesn't have access to a repo, and there's a couple of things still running. But we'll let him continue on. So for those vulnerabilities, we can triage those. I'll show you how to triage stuff with an agent that we call Cato. But coming back to the integrations and meeting the customer where they are, it's just input. Get all the threats, all the risks into one place, and then let's rifle shot out the actual outcomes. The number of integrations we support is fairly expansive. We're constantly adding some. So Mr. Rice over at HackerOne, we're integrated with HackerOne. Casey, another person who I consider a friend. We need to add BugCrowd. There's a couple other integrations we need to add. But the number of integrations that we have is fairly expansive, and it continues to grow. And so we'll continue to add to these. It's a benefit to us when we're doing our overt actions, and it's a benefit to the customer. Okay, so that's assets. The other thing that we want to look for is technologies. As we map the environment, we open source something called Nerva. Nerva does really cool things. It actually fingerprints software, but it's a little bit more sophisticated than some of these earlier versions. Nerva will actually, as part of its process, go in and pull down the repos of something like MySQL. And this is, by the way, it's very Wiz-like in terms of screen on screens, but it'll actually pull down the repos, look through the code to literally understand how it works and how can we fingerprint, and it'll even look at version differences, right? So does MySQL 5.744, does that differ from 8.043? And we just straight up look at the code to determine how it's done. So we want to map the terrain to understand the technology. So as CISA CAB NBD comes out, we know exactly where those assets are and the technology that runs on them. That's part of it. Something for the defenders. Something for the attackers, we go 0-day hunting. And if a target is particularly hard, nothing really is. But if it's particularly hard, we'll just fire up Constantine and we'll have it find 0-day for us. This is not going to finish in the time of the demo. Constantine can take anywhere depending on the size of the repo. I'll explain that in a minute. 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours. It's a full run. And so the way that Constantine works is it looks at the code base. It understands the size of the code base. It understands that, you know, an agent can only really look at like meaningfully about 10,000 to 15,000 lines of code for 200,000 tokens. These models are getting bigger. They're going to 1 million. They'll eventually be 10 million, but you have context routes. So the further off you get from 0, the worse the model gets, because it's, you know, chain of thought reasoning and sort of all that stuff. Something will eventually fix this, like Ngram and kind of what DeepSeek is doing, which is super cool. But we wind up looking at the entire code base, figuring out how many agents we have to run across that code base so it doesn't hallucinate. It has full context as it runs its routes. Then it goes through a threat model. It understands, you know, here are the input sources, here are your security controls for encryption, here's auth-in, auth-in, and then we give it a prompt, you know, find ODAs, you know, CVSS 10 crits, right? Remote code execution, stuff like that. We have a lot of ODAs that we're sitting on related to this. It doesn't just find the vulnerability. It writes the exploit, verifies that it works, and it'll even patch and send up a patch to the repo and PR it if we wanted to. We are responsibly disclosing some things we have to kind of hold on to for operational reasons, but that's Constantine. So the reason that we do this is threats. Threats come in from CISA CAB. That's what I'm filtering on right now. It could be NBD, could be a number of things. But as these things come out, kind of the trivia stuff, as these things come out, we want to look at the EPSS score, the CVSS. Does it have a public exploit? Is that public exploit available? Doesn't really matter anymore if it's not. We'll get the end day with NBD and CISA CAB. We don't really need to use Constantine because it's an O-day hunter. We can use Simultaneous, his little brother, to take information where we kind of know something's there and then just dial it in. But we use this information as inputs, technologies inputs, assets are inputs, even vulnerabilities are inputs. So just because Wiz found something, or even because we found something, or Tenable, or whatever the case is, it's just a signature check, right? And we have various ways to improve our signatures. If we go to attacks and we go to signatures, it is Nuclei, and we love those guys. They're awesome. You know, I think they're doing this too, but basically, when we or an agent confirms that something's a false positive, there's an automatic feedback loop, and we can even do it here if we wanted to, where it'll take that signature, understand that it's a false positive, update the signature, create a sandbox for itself, verify the signature, PR the signature back to us, so that we have a higher true positive rate over time, which is pretty cool. So vulnerabilities come in. They get flipped to demonstrated states from detected, and oh, there we go. So he found something. So it's now demonstrated. Once they're flipped to demonstrated states, we can cut tickets. Those tickets can be automatic. This one cut to 2 different places because we're hooked up to Jira. Let me just log in real quick. See if I can log in with Google. So here it is, it's bidirectional both ways, and so when they think that they've remediated it, we get notification, and then we can go in and autonomously retest. Now the reason that this ticket got cut is because it has to flip to demonstrated, and so if we go to notification settings, we can send outbound email, because enterprises, they already have like 70 tools. They don't need another dashboard to babysit, so we try to push information out of the platform to make it actionable. But email, outbound hooks, chat messaging, ITSM, we're hooked up to Jira. You saw there was ADO as well, various things. I need to add linear. There's always stuff to do. But it has to be a severity of high, and it has to be demonstrated. When those 2 conditions are met, that's when it'll fire off a ticket. And so in that case, it was a critical. Okay, so that's set up. Those are the vulnerabilities. Those are the threats. As we find these things, yeah, actually, let's see how he's doing. No, I don't want you to, no, I don't need a formal summary right now. So he can generate PDFs and all that sort of stuff, but let's showcase a passive agent. Please triage some of our other detected risks and verify if they are true positives or false positives. I could type. It doesn't really matter. He's going to understand. Okay, so we're going to let him run. He'll launch Cato. Let him pick. I might have to come back and check on him to you might want to verify with me, but it's passive. I don't know that that's necessary. So as these things come in, we can kind of triage them. Coming back to what I wanted to show you, it's a graph database. I showed you a graphical representation. We can also ask whatever questions we want. We can create new queries, but some of our common queries are here, common exposures, and so some of the things we talked about, LLMs. We love these things. It's going to be the new attack surface probably the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't matter how good. It doesn't matter how good the models get. It doesn't matter that Mythos is at 9%. They're sycophantic. You just keep multi-turning on them. You'll eventually get what you want to get out of them. You might have to do a few sessions, but you'll eventually get what you want out of them. So whether it's LLM chats or databases or whatever the case, awesome. But with things like a WAF integrated, we can actually look at, show me the applications that you have and that your WAF is not actually protecting. It's either not in the asset inventory or it's in monitoring mode or whatever. Same thing for SSO, right? Show me the applications that have login portals, because we're crawling all of your sites, looking, directory busting and all this things that we do to find the login portals. But now show me that and that are not federated by, in our case, Okta. It could be intra ID, it could be ping ID or whatever the case is. Something for us, something for the defender. So for us, those login portals, they probably don't have 2FA, strong password policy, that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to target. And by targeting that, it'll help the defender get that stuff remediated. For them, this is their list that allows them to do a gap analysis, right? So we can run queries like that are more table-based. The critical advisories, if you actually look us up, a lot of these things are from us in terms of our ODay research. But we can also ask questions about relationships. And so Active Directory, cloud, IAM, privilege abuse, that sort of stuff. But whether it's on-prem, cloud, anything like that, there's things like Bloodhound and Azure Hound and all that sort of stuff. We have that in here too. And you can see that the list is pretty comprehensive. I'll just pick one for the sake of time. Classic Bloodhound attack path for Active Directory. Show me, non-privileged workstation. And how do I get to a domain admin? We'll just pick another one and we'll move on. Pick this one. No, I was already on that one. This one. And that one is a little bit more gnarly, but you kind of get the idea, right? Of how do these things relate to each other. Context for attackers, context for defenders, context for agents, right? That's what we're trying to do. Ultimately, from all this context in the art of the theory, what is actually possible, and that's how you get to a kill chain. And we kind of map out these kill chains for, typically the way we work with CISO is tell us what is a bad day. Not all critical risks are created equal. Not all assets are created equal. We want to talk about materiality. What does that mean? We're talking about things that would cause like a customer disclosure event, a thing that would cause a shareholder disclosure event, a thing that would get a CISO in front of the audit committee or the board of directors, and it's not a fun day for anyone. So input, outcome. Of all the things you can be doing, here are the things you need to be doing. You're talking about your PAN data, which you said was important, PII, PHI, whatever the case is, your intellectual property, your financial forecasting for the quarter, so we can pump and dump scheme on you, that sort of stuff. And so as we go through these attack paths, we can create these, agents can create these, but it kind of shows, not only are these 6 million events from Wiz, here are the actual ones that are material, and of the ones that are actually material, these are staging environments, doesn't really matter. Here's where all your ML data is, that matters, probably start there, start with materiality. We have capabilities, talked to you about signatures, some of this other stuff won't apply as much, but we have various ways from a red team perspective, to launch via Terraform scripts, to, DigitalOcean or Azure or GCP or AWS, doesn't really matter. Domain parking for our various web pages that we set up. This one's pretty cool. Payload generator. We also have plugins that go into Burp. And so as we're doing web applications, if we need to do them manually, we can actually talk to Marcus. Marcus can look at what Burp is doing. We have, C2 stuff where we literally have, teleconference technology, kind of like a Zoom. I'm not going to say what it is, but there's all kinds of ways that we can get in. We have C2 bridges. We have Juicy Fruit. This is some of the stuff we need to go through for Constantine. It's kind of our backlog of ODAs that even though it's verified, we still need to verify it. You can see some MySQL stuff, Redis, Keycloak, whatever the case is. So that's kind of the goal. We ultimately know that we're going to have to do a full feedback loop. I don't think it's going to be a problem finding risk anymore. And defenders are already completely inundated with this stuff. So step one is to help them prioritize attacker verified prioritization, right? Part of what we need to do is then have a full autonomous loop, and we're kind of hinting at this with Constantine that it can actually patch. But whether it's a patch or a CI/CD, deployment or whatever the case is, I think not only the attack will become autonomous, but the patching needs to become autonomous. We're talking about risk, and we're talking about pre-boom. So everything in this industry for like the last 15 years, predominantly, there's cloud and now there's AI, but a big part of it was detection response. Totally agree. Technologies like CrowdStrike are super awesome, but to really get not just the attack helix, but the double helix going, these things need to help improve each other. And so if we integrate with like a CrowdStrike or a Cortex or a Defender, we can actually put it in recorded mode, watch the telemetry data coming off of those tools, and then understand situational awareness. And so we did detonate, this kill chain. For 7 of these steps, you saw 4 of them. These other 3 you did not. Why not? Turns out, in this particular area of the environment, you don't have CrowdStrike deployed or whatever the EDR is. There's budget reasons or whatever, and so we took advantage of that. Where it could be, the technology actually did find something, but your folks need a little bit more training. It was kind of there in front of them. They just didn't understand what they were looking at, and we've seen that where we've gone in and done a red team, and then through that we found other indicators of compromise, and lo and behold, it's Muddy Waters, an Iranian APT that's been dwelling in their environment for 9 months, and they didn't know it. We can map that to the security controls and start to answer the question, like, yes, you do have a web application firewall. That is true. The problem is that 20% of your assets are not protected by the firewall. Same thing with SSO or whatever the control is, and then ultimately you kind of get a gap analysis. Where I ultimately want to take this is NIST CSF and ISO 27000. These are very technical frameworks. Push it up, evidence-based management, and actually give the CISO and the board of directors a security scorecard, a maturity framework, whatever name you want to put to it. But the benchmark is in reality. There's a difference between what someone says, what's something's written and what actually is. You got to kind of triangulate those things, but ground truth is the environment. And then the overlay between policies and what people say is just an understanding of why are you saying this when it's actually this, and now you get a real baseline of where you're at, attacker verified, right? Because the whole point of this is to keep people like us out. You would think that would be an important input in terms of how you think you're benchmarking and how you're doing. As we wrap this up, let's check on Cato and how he did. All right, so 2 false positives, 2 true positives. That's actually pretty good. False positive rates that we typically see are a lot worse. He just arbitrarily picked 4 things, but we could apply this to, triage my whiz results as well. Don't do all of them. Do 5. Something for us, something for them. And so the core value propositions as we wrap up, you need continuous coverage. We need to be watchers on the wall, just like your EDR is, right? And so the basic pitch is, we won't have time to let this run, but what you are up against is this. If my slide deck will show, the advantage is going to the attackers. So not everyone saw, and I'm surprised people aren't aware of this at this point, but in December, Mexican government agencies, 150 gigs of data was pulled out. and it was a person with 2 Claude licenses that did that. We're talking about voter registration. We're talking about tax records, just very, very sensitive stuff. And so in this sort of context and what you were doing, you wouldn't run your EDR 2 weeks out of the year. Why are you doing that with offensive security? It just does not make sense anymore. So value prop 1 is risk reduction at scale and continuously. Value proposition 2 is let's give defenders time back. Leveraging these agents, leveraging the attacker's perspective, we can take those 10,000 things and just get it down to the few things that actually matter. The classic funnel that every product company tries to show, but no one can actually pull it off. And then the third value proposition is a capital allocation play. So you start with penetration testing. We actually cover the annual as part of it, and we just time slice what we found for those 2 or 4 weeks that we're doing it, but we're risk reducing with you every year. So that's the starting point of capital reallocation. But we actually service all of these various areas. And so what we see is in year 2 or year 3 of the subscription, you'll start to see decommissioning of your point products, because we have a chance to show your attack surface management solution that you're using. Look at what it's finding, look at what we're finding, and it's like and like. I'm Nathan Sportsman, founder and CEO of Praetorian. I hope you enjoyed this demo, and I'll continue to let Marcus and Cato run. Thanks for the time.